Hey guys, I'm Faye Louise.
And I'm Jessie Yandel.
And I'm back, and this is Now That's What I Call a Talk Show.
We have an amazing show for you today.
It's going to be spectacular, it's going to be heated, it might even get a little argumentative.
But not dramatic. We're all grown-ups and we're going to listen to each other.
Absolutely. I'm just going to have a look at social media and do a few shares. But let's get down first. Now That's What I Call Entertainment. Who's been watching RuPaul?
Well, I might have seen 1 or 2 episodes.
1 or 2 episodes? Come on, Jossie. I can't stop watching it. It's absolutely amazing. Eureka stole the show.
I've been saying for the past few weeks Eureka's going to come into her own. She is amazing.
She is amazing, but do you not actually feel like it was a given? She was going to come back after last time. She was kind of going to win it. She's the one that could do more. She's the one that could be the alternative one for this year. And let's just face it, RuPaul's loving her.
Oh, I know. On the subject of RuPaul, what on earth was RuPaul?
Oh my god, Ru was the happiest person going. He was like, da-da-da. He was in every scene.
Oh,
and that's
God,
the first
yes.
time I've seen him in every scene. I think he's got a crush on someone.
He must have. I wonder who. Cameron Michaels.
You think? I mean, he's the fit one.
Oh, God. Yeah.
Absolutely. So, from one amazing show to one pretty boring show, Britain's Got Talent, guys, it's just not the same.
I must confess, I've not really watched any of it. Although, that said, I do like the No Voice guy. I'm rooting for him. Also, he's from the Northeast.
Well, he is from the Northeast, and I do root for him as well. Oh, and there's my doll. I do root for him as well, but I don't root for him because he's disabled. I root for him because he's really funny. Yeah, and that's what I love about that, the fact that he's actually taken something that is a bit, ooh, we're not meant to talk about it, and thought, you know what, I'm going to talk about it.
It's self-deprecating humour.
This is the main reason as well why we've got one of our guests on tonight, because to be totally fair, there's nothing wrong with speaking your mind. It's how you choose to do it.
Exactly.
Don't forget, guys, to keep sharing. We will be inviting our guest on very soon. Please, Jossie, tell everyone a little bit about our guest.
So, I came across Venice a few months ago, I think. There's been a lot of things going on about self-ID and reforms to the Gender Recognition Act, which is something which actually interests me. The whole debate of what makes a woman. We recently seen Venice on the Channel 4 documentary with Monroe Bergdorf, which you know, Venice was on, and I just thought she would be a really, really good guest for us to have on the show.
Not only for us to have on the show, but for us to have a conversation between 3 adults that, in my opinion, should be able to have one.
Oh yeah, people shouldn't be silenced.
Absolutely not. I'm going to try and invite her on now. Sorry about this, guys.
This always happens.
Oh no, there's no problem. We're just inviting people.
So a little bit more about Venice when Faye is doing that. So Venice has a Facebook page called We Need to Talk, and they're doing like a tour across the UK. My answer to that is we need to talk, but we also need to listen to each other.
Massively need to listen.
We can't silence people. No debate gets us nowhere.
Yes, I totally agree. Sorry, I'm just adding an hour. I was just keeping an eye out. So she should be added in very soon, and hopefully we'll be able to get this conversation on. We've got some very interesting questions, not just from ourselves, but from the audience. The audience have been able to write in. Hello!
Hello!
I'm just going to check the volume. 2 seconds.
Yep.
Yep, everything's fine. Hello, welcome to the show.
Hi.
So, for everybody that doesn't know who you are, please explain a little bit about yourself.
My name's Venice Allen, and my old Twitter name was Dr. Radfem, and I've been organising events around Britain about the proposed changes to the Gender Recognition Act, about transgenderism, about women's rights, yeah, for the last 9 months.
So I'm going to get the interview underway, and I've got a few questions. The first question is, what's it like to be you?
Well, since I've been organising these events for the last 9 months, my life's been quite surreal. Before that, I was just a regular single mother and jewellery designer. And I also have been organising events for many years. I've been doing free clothes swaps. I got involved in this conversation because I used to be a big Corbyn fan, and I heard him say last July that he supported the Conservatives about their proposed updates to the Gender Recognition Act. And I kind of thought at the time that if he just heard our concerns, then he might listen to us and he might take our concerns into consideration. So last September, I tried to organise a debate between trans activists and so people who supported the proposed updates and people who didn't, two on each side. And I tried to get my local Momentum group to host this. And that was basically the beginning of the story. I don't know if you heard about our first event where our meeting point was at Speaker's Corner.
Yeah, that was.
Did you hear about that?
Was that the video?
It was in the Houses of Parliament.
No, that wasn't. That was one of our more recent meetings in March. Our first meeting, it was supposed to be in a community library in my local area in Lewisham. But the venue was harassed by trans activists. First of all, we had two speakers on either side. We had two people from Stonewall, and we had Dr. Julia Long and Miranda Yardley, and they were going to discuss the Gender Recognition Act and these proposed updates. Stonewall pulled out a few days before, and then trans activists started harassing the community library, the venue. They did a risk assessment and they cancelled the night before. So we had to relocate our meeting to a venue in central London. We didn't want the new venue to get attacked and harassed. So we made Speaker's Corner the meeting point, where we were met by a protest by Sisters Uncut and Class War trans activists and advocates. And one of our attendees, a 60-year-old humanist celebrant, a woman, was beaten up by three trans activists. And one of them was found by the police and recently found guilty of unprovoked assault. So that's where I kind of came into this conversation, genuinely believing that we could have some kind of discussion. I felt that if we got off the internet, off Twitter, off Facebook, in a room together, we could have a proper conversation and find a solution to these gender laws. Yeah.
Your question?
Right, so at the moment, self-ID is quite a big thing, but there doesn't really seem to be clarity on what that actually entails. Like, is the self-identification laws, is it literally going to be in the literal sense that any man can say at any time, I identify as a woman, to gain access to women's spaces? Or will there be safeguards in place? Because surely there must be. And the whole thing is, obviously, you did try to have the first meeting with trans activists and also with radical feminists. Is there any way that people can just find common ground? Is there any way?
I used to think so, but I think it's really difficult to tell. You know, there's two positions here. Well, there's three positions. There's trans women are women, trans women are men, or I don't know. It's very hard once you've really researched this to not be on. You have to choose one of those positions, really. And that's what's making it really difficult to discuss. Trans activists say that they don't want to discuss this because their existence is not up for debate. But we're not trying to debate their existence. We're trying to find a solution to this law. And I don't know how that compromise is going to be reached, to be honest.
Why do you think there is such a divide between trans activists and radical feminists?
Well, as I say, there's these two positions, and they conflict. Whether you think trans women are men or trans women are women. I mean, firstly, I want to ask you a question. What do you think trans means? What do you think transgender means?
Well, for me, if I'm honest with you, being a woman is a different journey for every woman that I've come across. Any woman, depending if they've transitioned or they haven't transitioned or however they express themselves, or if they were just born a woman. I feel that I'm a woman because of the journey I've been on, and the fact that when I was transitioned, I had to do 2 years living as a woman. There was lots of different processes to get to the point where I was a little bit more comfortable. And yes, I kind of did hum and haw about the process. I do think the process could be shortened, but I don't think you could just one day turn around and say, regardless of anything, oh, I identify as this, I identify as that. Being a woman for me is about the peace of mind I have on a daily basis, that I'm really comfortable with who I am. It was nothing to do with sexual gratification, because I didn't suddenly want to wear dresses and want to wear women's clothes. I actually couldn't really understand or enjoy the thought of two men together. For me, it didn't sit right. So then I started to think of why I would think that, because obviously when I was younger, I just assumed I was gay. But when I looked more deeper, I understood that I felt more comfortable physically being a woman with another man. That was what made me feel more comfortable and complete. So to be a woman, for me, it's about the natural feelings. I don't really care about wearing a dress. I rarely wear dresses unless I'm going to somewhere, some event or something. Being a woman, like for you, Jossie, how do you feel?
I don't know. I think obviously biological sex matters. I think trans women are trans women. They will be trans until the day die. Like that's something I always say. But I do agree with everyone has a different journey to womanhood, and it's just lived experience. But I'm not saying that with like biological women's voices should be silenced. I don't believe that at all. And I think a lot of transgender people do seem to think that feminists are being exclusionary by talking about issues which are specific to natal women, for example, reproductive rights. Why should a woman be silenced on that? Just because it might not concern me directly, it should still be discussed.
What do you think?
Well, I mean, I believe that, I wasn't aware that the definition of a woman had ever changed until recently. I thought that the definition of a woman was an adult human female, and but what I asked you was what does transgender mean? I mean, there's been a lot of conversation about what is a woman, but what do you think trans means?
I think trans means on a spectrum. For instance, if you were born a specific gender and you identify as the complete opposite gender, in your mind, even the way you look at your body, except all that comes with it, that to me defines you as transgender. I don't actually believe, and I'm going to be totally honest with you, for a long time I was really strict in the way of thinking, and I was on the notion of, if you haven't had surgery, it doesn't make you haven't transitioned, you're just living in the trans bubble. And I educated myself over the years, and it took me years to educate me to understanding that, if you don't want to have surgery, you can still be a woman, because that's how you are in your mind, and it's your decision how your body is. So to be transgender is to be fully identifying and representing the gender you've transitioned to, and if you understand.
I think so, but what do you obviously, what does gender mean to you, and what does sex mean to you? Do you use them interchangeably, or do you see that your gender is, as gender is a woman, but your biological sex is male, or how do you see it?
I see myself as a heterosexual female who was born male, but over the years transitioned to be the woman I am today. I live a very heterosexual life. I'm pretty boring, if I'm honest. and, you know, my partner's heterosexual, he'll be heterosexual to the day he dies. He's a very, very hetero guy, if that's the kind of thing that people would say. But what do you see transgender as from your point of view?
Yeah, like to be honest with you, until quite recently, I saw a trans woman would be somebody who'd had a gender reassignment surgery. That's what I thought it meant, and I think that's what most people who are kind of outside our kind of bubble of talking about gender all the time on Twitter and Facebook, I think that's what most people think. But whereas in fact, the Recognition Act, and that piece of legislation in Britain was kind of the world leader at the time, where it meant that you went through this 2-year process with mental health professionals, you had a diagnosis of gender dysphoria, and then without surgery or any medical treatment, but you had to have the diagnosis, you could then legally change your sex on your, you know, you could get a gender recognition certificate, which then changed the, you know, you got an F on your birth certificate, or an M if you were going from a woman to a man, to a trans man. I don't think a lot of people are aware of that. So when we're talking about attitudes to trans rights and stuff, I don't think a lot of people understand that we're just talking about, even under the current system, that anybody can change their passport or their driving license without that self-ID, isn't it? And that gender identity is protected under the Equalities Act. Also in the Equalities Act is sex as a protected category. That's one of the things that they want to get rid of with the Gender Recognition Act. I mean, like a lot of people, I'd never heard of the 2004 Gender Recognition Act until I heard about the updates. And I think a lot of people like me feel that, like, oh, what is this legislation? How did it happen? How did the definition of a woman change? Has it changed? The definition of a man? I think people are confused, and I think that we need to have this conversation. And I think it's so often framed by trans activists as, you know, there's these old women who hate trans people. And I just think that's really oversimplifying it. In my personal experience, I've had lots of friends and acquaintances who identify as trans both ways. And it's never been a problem to me until I see that, you know, that the law's being changed. And from the way I see it, and I want my worries to be addressed by government, by organizations, you know, that if you allow anyone to self-define their legal sex, then women's rights and protections and programs become meaningless. Because how do we safeguard, like you said earlier?
Yeah, that's true. On the subject of using facilities, we've seen a lot of radical feminists will refer to transgender women as trans-identified men and say trans women are men, they should use the male facilities, etc., etc., etc. But how would that actually work in practice? Say
because if I used the male changing area in my swimming pool and got showered there'd be a big issue. There'd be a bit of a problem. And I actually agree with a few things I've heard, especially on a program I saw you on, where a lady said, should my daughter at the age of 7 be going into a female changing rooms and seeing a grown male penis? I have two kind of arguments. Regardless of age, a little girl's probably going to see a little boy's private part in the female changing rooms because parents take boys and girls in both.
But that's children.
But that's children. My opinion on a grown trans person, if they haven't chosen to have gender, because in my opinion, if you don't choose to have gender reassignment or all that doesn't matter for me. I don't really need to know what's under your clothes. That's your business, etc. But I would feel that any trans person who's transitioned, or most women, shouldn't really be walking around wiggling everything in the way. And if I hadn't had surgery and I was living as a woman in the female changing areas, I would have respect for the facility I'm in and know that there could be infants, there could be old elderly ladies who would be very confused and very, very shocked. And I would have my own kind of respect for the area I've entered into. Just as, for instance, a lady I go swimming with, she's a Muslim lady. She refuses to get unchanged in front of anybody, and she uses the
cubicle,
things. That's totally fine. And I think that's great. And I wouldn't really think it was okay to walk around nilly-dilly with your bits hanging out, regardless of your gender. You should respect the environment you go in. I totally get that if you can self-identify and say, oh, I'm a man, I'm a woman today, it does open the door for predators that aren't from the trans community that want to self-identify to get in these facilities to be able to attack and do stuff to vulnerable individuals, because you know that is when you say it like that, that is so scary. But facilities and companies do have their own kind of understanding, and if they saw someone who clearly wasn't there for good intentions, they have their own mind, and I'm sure they're able to say, you know, you're doing this and this isn't really comfortable for the other guests, and you need to respect that if you're going to be in this area.
Well, there's a few things that you said there. Like you said that, you know, actually in my experience in like communal changing rooms, women do just walk around with their bits hanging out, and it's not like you're parading in a sexual way. I feel comfortable in women's communal changing rooms, whether that's in a shop or in a swimming pool. You know, the issue is, of course, you are not going to go around parading your body. You're not going to, you know, whether you were pre-op or post-op. But we need laws can't be based on good willing. You know what I mean? And if we say that a penis can be a female sex organ, you know, then a trans woman with a penis has as much right to walk around comfortably in a women's changing room as a woman does. And that creates problems. And obviously it creates even more problems with self-ID. And I think when we're talking about vulnerable women,
I disagree. Sorry, I actually support you. I disagree with being able to say, this is my female penis, because I don't really care what anyone says. To be vulgar, a dick's what a guy has, and if he identifies as a guy, it's a penis. It's a penis. No, it's a penis. And if you've transitioned and you've chosen to keep your penis, you can't then just make up that it's some like unicorn feminine penis, because it's not.
On a stick.
Yeah, it's not that. But what I was saying, I wasn't saying, I mean, in my opinion, we get changed in the women change rooms and everyone just gets changed. But if you didn't have surgery, you should respect the area you came in and choose to get changed in a little bit of not a secretive place, just more of a convenient place where you should feel more comfortable and they should feel comfortable. I totally understand that some people just want to be able to walk around naked if they haven't had surgery. But unfortunately, we live in a society that's just really, 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 really going to be a stretch to obtain. And I do agree with you. There does need to be some sort of process put in place where the safety is met, because it does open the door for anybody to walk in there and go, I identify as a woman, I should be able to sit here and do that. I believe facilities and businesses should have their own discretion and be able to say, well, I'm sorry, you know, what you're doing doesn't seem like the behavior. This is the thing, the behavior of a woman wouldn't really want to go there. And as a woman, I know for me and you and my mum, if someone got a penis out, regardless if they identified as a woman, I would still feel very, very, very uneasy, regardless.
Yeah, and then how do we legislate for that? And then particularly, you know, when it comes to particularly vulnerable women, like in prisons and domestic violence centres and hostels, at the moment, in the Equality Act, there is an sex exemption for things like working in a rape crisis centre. That's one of the things that trans activists want to get rid of with these updates for the Gender Recognition Act. So I'm completely against that. I mean, and you know, you've got to look at, with the prison issue, you've got to understand that people could, you know, if you're in life imprisonment, people have got different priorities and different, you know, we're talking about extremely vulnerable people here, both the trans prisoners and the women prisoners, you know what I mean? And it's really complicated. And I think we need to thrash these issues out, not just us, but government. We need to have risk assessments. Do you know what I mean? I don't think that's unreasonable. I don't think you think that's unreasonable, do you?
Can I ask you this as well? Still on discussing facilities. If we, for instance, said, if you haven't had surgery, or you can't really be in a woman-only vicinity. Oh, I'm back. Are you back? Yeah, we're back. If a facility, yeah. So for instance, say for instance, it came out, and if you were born a man and you'd still transitioned, you really had to use the assigned at birth toilet. If we implied something like that, that would then go to trans men. And if a trans man had full surgery and then was told to use the female, we're still going to see, well, we could potentially see penis. Of it, you know, it gets so complicated. And I'll say this as well. I don't know if you'll agree. Our opinions, from what we've heard these trans activists and some transgender people saying, we just think that they're getting a platform and they are talking bollocks.
I think the problem is the most vocal people in the whole trans rights activists. They're the ones with the misogynistic views, and they're silencing what I would say is the rational. I would consider myself quite a rational person. They're silencing the rational, and they have this term "true scum," which I think is a horrible, horrible term to call someone who, like us, we're willing to talk to people and maybe try and find understanding.
As you'll know, there's things you say and there's things we say, and we're probably not going to agree, right? And that's just life.
It seems like we're kind of agreeing on a surprising amount, actually. Do you know what I mean?
Well, actually, I said this. I said we would. I thought we would. I know there's certain. I'm going to hold my hands up. There's been so many people messaging us, right? And saying, no, don't do the show. She's a monster. She's this, she's that. And I was like, I haven't even met her. Let me make my own judgment. For God's sake. Yeah. I haven't watched anything apart from the Monroe thing that you said. If I'm honest, a lot of your content seems to be getting deleted, which really annoyed me because I wanted to be able to see. But then I stopped myself because then I would be that could be a circumstantial reaction from yourself. I understand. People can be really nasty. People say horrible things to me. I'll say something back and then I'll think, I could have worded that a little bit better. Maybe I shouldn't have said that word. My point got across totally different. And that is the premise I had come into this interview, because I thought, you know what? A lot of the things she said, she may have said in a different context. And a lot of the things she said, she may have totally wanted to say, and I might not agree on it, but I'm not going to...
Or I might not have even said those things. Do you know what I'm saying? Like,
exactly.
A lot of stuff has been said about me that's really strict. It absolutely isn't true. And I do think that's a worry for your community, that you've got a lot of really, like, out there people speaking for you. And I know a lot of trans people are really unhappy about that.
Yeah, well, we actually experienced it ourselves about 2 years ago. With the militant people in the trans community, because we were in a beauty pageant and people didn't like that in the trans community. And
well, I'm told on a daily basis, I've got it easy. I have no idea what it's like to be a trans woman. And I'm like, what? How? What? And they'll list the reasons. You're passable, you look like a woman, you this, you that. And I know this sounds horrible, because I have people who have transitioned in my life and they haven't transitioned to the best potential, because that's just life and not everybody looks the way they want to look. There's things I would still change. And I actually turned around and said to them, you just sound bitter and jealous. That's not a discussion. That's not you having your opinion. That's you basically muting my opinion because you envy my so-called passing beauty. And it was just the most stupidest thing we ever actually came across. It was absolutely mad.
Well, that's what I was going to say.
Because we've heard that you feel trans women aren't women.
Well, I think, my definition of a woman is an adult human female. So I think that, we do differ on that. But that doesn't mean that I don't want trans women to have, all the human rights that anyone else would have. Do you know what I mean? But, my own personal opinion, and it's different to a lot of other radical feminist. I don't even think I deserve the title of a radical feminist yet, because I'm so new to this. I haven't read all the books. I have got huge respect for like Sheila Jeffreys and Julia Long and radical feminists that I've got to know. But, you know, my own personal position has always been that post-op trans women should be able to change their legal sex. But my problem is where male-bodied people want to legally become, you know, that's in the current law, legally become women, and that's my issue. It doesn't matter if what I believe. We're talking about legislation that keeps everybody safe.
Do you?
Yeah, so that's what I wanted to ask you, what you thought trans meant, because, you know, we're talking, you know, the trans umbrella now is all about, you know, it's not just people who have had or hope to have gender reassignment surgery, which is actually a very small percentage of the population. We're talking about people who want to be legally non-binary. What does that even mean? Are they identifying as intersex? I really just don't understand it. We've got people like Pip Bunce who are, you know, celebrity cross-dressers. Like, I don't think that helps your cause at all. Do you know what I mean?
So I think the problem with the trans umbrella is it just means so much. My whole thing is, I think non-binary should be celebrated as non-binary in its own thing. It doesn't need to be transgender. The two things don't make sense. Transgender means to change gender. Non-binary is rejection. It's an oxymoron. I don't understand why. I'm not saying that non-binary people don't exist. If you want to identify as non-binary, go ahead. Makes no difference really in my life. But I just think I can't really see or maybe understand how the two can be the same. And I do think the thing with the trans umbrella, I think it was made with good intentions. Umbrellas protect people, but I just think it hasn't really worked.
It was made with good intentions, and good intentions we did achieve until, might not agree with me, everyone that's watching. If you are watching, you know, get sharing. But some people abused it and have abused it and feel like they have a justification right to abuse it. Me, myself, if you want to identify as whatever you want to identify, that's totally fine. And if you want to tell me about it, so I might have a bit of an understanding, that's absolutely great. At one point in my life, I totally didn't get non-binary. I used to have a total narrow-minded opinion. But then I met a few people that were in the community, and what they said to me was very simple. Someday I want to dress like this, someday I don't. And I was like, okay, as long as you're not hurting anybody. But then I met a very radical non-binary, and I was an idiot, and who am I to ask a question? And I was like, what? I was like, what?
Yeah.
And they were like, no, you don't have any right to ask me a question. You are being, I think I got called transphobic.
Yeah, she did. We got transphobic.
You wouldn't be the first trans person to be accused of being a transphobe.
Oh, well, there's one trans support group in Newcastle that I actually got removed. This is the crazy, by the police, because my opinion wasn't the opinion of the owner of the support group. And I stood up and said, this is not a support group. This is a leadership. And if you don't fall in line, you get kicked out. And what my argument is there was a parent there with a child, and this child said, I don't remember anything about growing up. I don't remember any of that. It was horrible. Even to the point of someone was like, I was an alien. And I was like, sat listening thinking, you were an alien. You don't remember growing up. I personally remember lots of my birthdays when I was little. I used to get footballs and different toys. I used to play football sometimes. That didn't mean I was like a whole straight man and oh my God. That just meant I was a child enjoying my childhood. And maybe I didn't develop the fact that I wanted to be different at the age 2, 4, 6. Some people do, and that's totally fine. Not affecting my life. But what made me totally confused was the fact that why were we taking away the childhood? And then the woman who owned it said, yeah, I agree with that. You would never, that gender. And I was like, whoa, you're just destroying that parent's memories of their child. I watched this woman's whole world just crumble. And I was like, don't do that. I stood up and was like, no. And she said, get out. And I refused to leave. So the police came because I didn't agree. And then I was called transphobic.
Well, that's what we're dealing with, and not just with trans issues. I think it's a generational thing. I think it comes from like the way people interact on social media. It's just this extraordinary situation where people are so intolerant of other people's views, and if they disagree with one another, they call the police. I mean, it's crazy. Is the connection okay?
What would you do if your child identified as transgender?
If one of my kids said that they felt, I've got 2 sons, and if one of them said that they felt like they were a girl, I would get as much help for them as I could. I would talk to everyone I would talk to all the available. I talk to my doctor. I talk to Transgender Trend. I talk to mermaids, because that's what we do in life, isn't it? We come up against a situation, and we look for all the available information, you know, and I would talk to I've got a friend who's got a trans teenager. I've got friends who are radical feminists. I would try and get as much help for my child as possible. My kids are 9 and 11. I would be very, I don't think I ever would, and I'd be very wary about prescribing Lupron puberty blockers, because I've read that it's really dangerous to block a puberty. I don't know, how do you feel about Jazz Jennings? You know, I Am Jazz. What do you feel about that story?
I think it's just a sensationalized show in America, making money off probably a girl that got wrapped up into the situation. Me personally, I had no blockers when I was little. Don't think it was available. I think people need to be not careful, but aware that if you do take certain blockers at a younger age, it actually can totally stop your either sperm count or ovary production and development as well. I'm not saying don't do it. I'm just like, as any tablet we take, as any injection or operation we have, be wary and be cautious of the counterindications that actually can happen. And people need to be
especially
more aware.
For kids.
Well, my opinion is, let a kid be a kid.
Exactly.
Just let a child be a child. If she wants to be a girl, she wants to be she wants to be a dinosaur, let her be a dinosaur. It doesn't really matter to me. I don't really get the whole... Well, for me, all these labels are amazing. And all these new labels are even better if they make people feel happy. But certain things I work on in my life, my mantra now is just be equal. And if you want to have an opinion, that's great. What I feel, and I don't know if you'll agree, a lot of the radical feminists are greeted and met by, I'm going to say it, an arsehole section of the transgender community.
The most vocal.
The most vocal, the most rah, this, that, because I've witnessed it and I've experienced it. So then, I don't know if you'll agree, that must make you really friggin' angry and peed off that you're getting screamed at and shouted at and really angry.
Beaten up, literally.
And you say things back or you argue. And what irritates me is, I bet if when you first started doing everything you do, if me or Jossie were on the other side having this discussion, you probably wouldn't be getting, I feel, the negative reaction as much. I don't agree with everything you say. And deep down inside, because I come from a place of love, I hope you don't mean everything you say. But that's just me.
Well, what are you talking about? What have I said that's so hurtful?
Well, I wouldn't really say hurtful. I just think, I'm trying to articulate it.
Are you ever, sometimes, after you've said things to, I mean, there was an article that you supposedly said,
transgender women are men, and when you were kicked out of the Labour Party.
Transgender women are men, and then you called a transgender person a man. I always question the circumstances of how that came about.
Well, I mean, I don't think, in my heart, I don't believe that you can change sex. That doesn't mean I can't respect you. I mean, identity is a two-way thing. It's how we feel about ourselves, and it's how other people see us. in my personal life, I've always used preferred pronouns. I've had lots of friendships with transgender people. And I've still got friends. I mean, some of my trans friends I've lost since this campaign, but I've still got trans friends on my Facebook who seem to have very similar opinions to you. I've also got one of my best friends is a Catholic. I'm an atheist. I don't find it difficult. You can still be friends with someone and fundamentally disagree with certain things that they believe. We don't all have to believe the same things. But I think one of the questions that you said that you were going to ask me is like, do I think that all trans people are a threat to natal women? Of course I don't. What the people I think are a threat to women are the people who deny that there is a conflict between trans rights and women's rights and try to shut down any discussion about that. That's what's dangerous, not trans people themselves, but it's these really like hardcore trans activists that we're talking about. Which
yeah, but a lot of the things that the trans activists say, I don't even believe. I don't even agree with. A lot of this stuff I hear, I'm like, I don't agree with that.
And like the stuff about the Irish repeal the 8th, and then there's some trans groups saying that they want an apology from the repeal the 8th organisation because it was too cis, whatever focused. And I'm like, I don't know. I haven't seen that many trans people, even quite prominent trans activists. I haven't seen much support for that idea. It's a kind of, there are extremists on all sides. And I just think we really, my organisation's called We Need to Talk. And I'm really glad that we're talking right now. And I think that dialogue needs to continue. And it's one thing doing it through live link up, but I think actually these conversations need to happen in a real life space where...
My worry is though, Venice, we come to a live debate and because we do speak quite understandably, I think we speak quite reasonably, if we are met with, I've seen documentaries where people are shouting, you're a man, like you're a bloke. I would be very upset by that and really offended. If I was to come to a place and I had a conversation like this and we had a normal debate and as you've just said, you don't believe someone can transition from gender to gender. That's your opinion. But if you're still okay to respect someone in your company and respect that's happening, then I'm okay with that. I don't actually argue that that's an issue. If you say something negative towards a trans person, I will disagree, but I will always say, what were the circumstances that action happened? Because there's always you don't just wake up in the morning and go, right, who can I upset today? But there is people out there that do. I mean, we did a live show a few weeks ago, and this guy was just continuously on my newsfeed just going, you're a man, you'll never be a man. And everyone was like, oh my God. And I literally said, why are you giving him airspace? He means nothing to me. He'll never mean anything to me. And he's basically writing, you're a man, you're a man, you're a man. And I just thought, let him continue. It just makes it look like I've got loads of comments. Great. But there was so many people, like, instantly got angry and were like,
angry on her behalf.
Angry on my behalf. And I was like, whoa, you don't ever get angry on my behalf. Let me get angry if I need to get angry.
Yeah. And like, we none of us have the right to be, to not be offended. As a woman, I feel offended by a lot of the stuff I see and advertising and around the world. We can't legally enforce politeness. But when my feeling about, these events is that when actually people do get together, there aren't that many complete arseholes in the world. And people actually, if people offer respect, they're given respect. That's just my experience. And
but what do you think of them people? What do you think of the people that are shouting in the crowds and are screaming, you're a man and shouting very horrible pronouns, and they say, oh, I'm a radical feminist, I'm a feminist. Do you ever say to them, you're not?
Well, I don't know, because when has this ever happened that people are shouting at each other in real life? Shouting on Twitter and Facebook.
Did you watch the Gender Quake documentary?
Yeah, no, the debate.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was there in the audience, and it wasn't as simple as that, as people just shouting out, I'm a man. It didn't happen like what Ash what's her face said it did. You know, it literally didn't happen like that. There was a couple of frustrated people who were trying to make serious points that they're shouting out, and then they were accused of shouting out penis. That just didn't happen. Like, I think there's just so much just misrepresentation. Again, that's TV as well. Like, honestly, I think if we had an event where we had, like the original event that I wanted, where we had 2 people defending the Gender Recognition Act and 2 people disagreeing with it, and a neutral chair and a mixed audience, I think people would be surprised how much human common ground there actually is.
Exactly, and I think that is what we need to find.
Well, I think that's the reason we do the show, because we hope through Facebook our voice is heard. So someone actually does go, oh, I want to have a... Are we back? Can you hear us?
I can sort of, it's kind of breaking up a little bit.
Is it better now?
I can't hear you. I just heard that better now. Try now.
Is that better?
I can't hear you.
All right, 2 seconds. Can you hear us now?
Yeah.
Yay!
Yay! So
yeah, it just cut out then again.
You were going on about
no, I can't hear you.
People shout over. And...
Oh yeah, so I would be happy to have a debate in a safe environment like that, and I would probably be with Jossie the more understanding, because I just feel like women's
voices should be heard.
Women's voice should be heard. What you said before, you said there needs to be women's laws and trans laws, and I agree. But there will always be a conjoined few laws that matter and offer both people. And that's the differentiation that people are not understanding. There will always be laws for men, women, men that conjoin and overlap.
Yeah, of course.
And be totally honest, some of the laws for transgender people could never apply to a woman who was born naturally. Just as some of the laws for a woman that was born naturally
doesn't apply to trans
will never apply to me.
Absolutely.
But it's fine. I don't get the problem if we have separate things and we have some conjoined things. Like, as long as we're all protected in a safe place, it's fine.
Yeah, I agree. And I think, I think it's really unfair when people say that we don't want trans people to have rights. Most of the women that I'm involved with, 99% of them are like from the left and are committed to human rights for every single human being, however they see themselves, whatever surgery they've had done or not had surgery done. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about women's rights and the erosion of women's rights by these proposals. Do you know what I mean? And I don't think that, from what you've said to me, it sounds like you're quite sympathetic to our concerns. At the very least, being prepared to have a conversation, which is why you've invited me on your
Everybody
show.
should be heard. Everybody should be heard.
It's the only way to move forward.
My worry is, on your side and our side and all that stupidness, there are individuals that are being heard over people, and it is the negative people that are getting heard. And I know a lot of people say you're negative and you're the worst person in the world, but you know what? A lot of people say I'm negative, and a lot of people say I'm the worst person in the world. I'm not going to lose sleep over it. I'm just going to relax and watch the telly, and that's life.
And I think that, like you said earlier, I think it's so easy to take people's remarks out of context, and I think people do that knowingly quite a lot, and they know that somebody said that something as part of a whole thread on Twitter that they just take out, and that happens on both sides of this debate. People just take out that one little thing where it doesn't make sense and there's no context. They say, look at that baddie, they said this and he said that and she said that, and it's really not fair. And I think that we need to have a bit more integrity, everybody, that we don't do that just to score political points off each other. and that we look for actual genuine resolution to this, because something has to happen to this law,
So how would you feel if we all, if for instance, you went swimming to my swimming pool and we were in the same changing rooms? Would that make you feel uncomfortable?
Well, you said you're a post-op trans woman,
yes.
So no, that wouldn't make me feel uncomfortable personally. Obviously, for other radical feminists, that would. But for me, that's always been my line. But then, that for a lot of trans activists is completely out of order, because we're taking trans rights back to the Gender Recognition Act.
But answer me this: if you physically can't see what's between someone's legs, you're never really going to know, are you?
No, but we need. I think women-only spaces should be for people who are legally women, And so, if somebody is not legally a woman, and then see, the problem with the self-ID thing is that if self-ID goes through in this country, or the way it is in other countries, is that if somebody is legally a woman, then if I complain about this man walking around with his penis out or whatever in the changing room, if I complain about it, it's me that gets chucked out, because if self-ID is in law, there's no way you can get rid of anyone from a female-only space. So therefore, that female-only space is meaningless.
But there will be protocols put in place. What they need.
What are those? That's what we want to know. What are those protocols? Because I've not heard.
Well, in my opinion, I will disagree with you. I don't believe surgery makes a woman.
Well, I don't either. I'm just saying from a legal point of view.
From a legal point of view, as you know, if you go to a woman's only space and you identify as a woman, then respect the environment you're in. People should just have respect. And there should be at least a year process for any type of major thing, just for someone's well-being, safeguarding, but also it's kind of it's an impractical law. It can never really happen, because what we're going to have cards walking around with cards. Are we all going to carry cards and be like, I'm a girl, is someone going to be on the door? Show me your girl ID. Like, it just wouldn't work. Do you know what I mean? Unless someone's going to do the whole shows, do you know what I mean? It just wouldn't work.
No, well, obviously that's never going to happen. We're not talking about showing each other's genitals. We're talking about the point at which you legally, at the moment, I think the law's wrong. I don't think you should just be able to change your passport. One of my friends changed her driving license to Reverend for a laugh. It doesn't make any sense. Your ID should correspond to your legal sex, and I don't think you should be able to legally change your sex unless you've had a sex change operation. So
that can be problematic, because, like me and Fee, we're presenting as female. If our ID was to say male, people would question that. They would look at us and they would be thinking, why is that?
I don't really think that cares if I look like a woman or not. For my passport, if I'm going to be honest with you, putting your name in, does it even have an F on a passport, Mike? I don't even. Oh well, if it does, in my opinion, having a passport that says F doesn't make you a woman. It just means you've got a passport that says an F. But from your stance as a legal, if someone was to present that in a woman's only space and say, "Oh well, I'm a woman," I think people will, of course, have their own discretion and would technically. I just. God, really.
We can't have laws based on goodwill, though. You know what I mean? Laws have to have safeguarding for people.
But we already have goodwill for women in women's changing rooms and men in men's changing rooms. The fact of the matter, it's actually not spoken about enough. Men get abused in men-only spaces by men and sometimes by women, and women get abused in women-only spaces by women who were born women, etc. But also, what isn't getting discussed, and I don't know if you'll agree with me, is just like the Asian ring of paedophiles in Rotherham. it was in the news, and they were like, it wasn't talked about for ages because it would be discrimination and it would offend an Asian community. Well, I'm gonna just throw it out there. Some crimes happen that transgender people do, and it's not being talked about. Why? Because you feel we're gonna be offended. That's just stupid. I want to know if someone's breaking the law because I want to feel safe. Because in a few years' time, if it does all come out, more of the crimes that go unspoken about, it's going to be another big thing. It's going to be another big drama. People are vulnerable wherever they are. And we live in a world of goodwill and good gesture. And to be totally fair, if there was 20 million Jossies and we were all in the change rooms every single day surrounded by women that were born women, nobody would really know. It only seems to become a problem when somebody clearly sees that somebody may be transgender or kind of looking male, and it is offensive to ask the question and wonder, but it's also safe to ask the question and wonder. So I'm sorry, I wouldn't feel offended if someone said to me, oh, like, you know, which toilets are you going to use? And then...
Well, you sound quite like it, but I just want to pick up on what you said about, like, people getting abused in single-sex facilities. I think it's worth remembering that 98% of sexual violent crimes are committed by men. Like, only 2% of sexual crimes are committed by women. I think it's
that
something
we know
like...
about.
What?
That we know about, that I talked about.
Yeah, I mean, but we do know that, you know, from an anecdotal and from a, you know, legally statistical point of view, that the majority of sexual crimes, you know, overwhelming majority of sexual and violent crimes are committed by men. There's no evidence that criminality changes with transition. You know, we can't, we're not talking about individuals here. We're talking about a law which makes, you know, which can't rely on goodwill. That's what I'm saying.
And what should the law be? What would you do with the law?
Well, as I say, I would make it that you, unless you've had surgery, you can't change sex. That would be my personal choice. From where I am, from the knowledge that I have right now, that you can't legally change your sex unless you've, you know, you've had a sex change operation. I don't think people who have the male-bodied people who have the ability to rape and impregnate, remembering that rape in British law is with a penis, I don't think they should be in women-only spaces. That's my opinion, as it is from the research that I've done.
But how would I, when I was 21, I had my boobs done, and didn't have my bottom surgery until I was 24. How would I have went to a male changing area? I'm getting changed, and I was very slim and very, you know, wouldn't that make me vulnerable? And why should I then become vulnerable?
Okay, then we need to fight for third spaces, don't we? You know, for those people. If you know, the numbers of people who identify as trans are increasing, if that's becoming an issue, then we need to make spaces available for people in that situation. You know, there is no evidence of trans women getting assaulted in male-only spaces. That's something that often gets ignored. But I appreciate, you know, as I say, I'm like somebody who wants everybody to feel comfortable. If that's an issue, we need to, as a society, discuss that. I don't think that the solution to that is to get rid of women-only spaces.
Would you be? No, I don't agree with getting rid of women-only spaces. Would you? Okay, then. So, say I counteract your offer of if you haven't had surgery, you can't come in. What if you haven't had surgery, but you have, of course, been presenting and living a female fulfilled life, and you are able to, I don't know, in some way prove it. Just like you would if you were buying a packet of cigarettes or a drink or some alcohol. You prove your ID. It's asked for that reason. And you know what? I 100% don't believe 90% of the community would be asked. I don't believe. But for the 10% that may be asked, if that 10% get asked and they're a bit upset, but there's another 40% that are actual predators and we protect ourselves from them, then what's wrong with that? Because I'd rather, unfortunately, put something upon like that for us to be able to say, oh, well, here I am. If it's an issue, I can prove it.
Well, that's why there needs to be clarity on the whole self-ID debate. There needs to be clarity. People need to know what their rights are. They need to know what the rights are, what they're responsible for as well. I think in the trans community, there's a lot of people that don't take responsibility for their own actions. And like I think we've just said before, voices like ours get silenced. Before we went on today, we had
so many complaints. It was ridiculous.
From today?
Today, yesterday, last week.
Funnily enough, not one bad comment from radical feminists. All the bad comments were from the transgender people.
Which was shocking for us, and even more shocking for us, and I'm going to say this, is I've had no issue with having the conversation we've had. I haven't agreed with everything you've said.
Sure.
And I'm sure you don't agree with everything I've said, but I'm definitely not, like, gaining for your blood. Like, not happening.
Vice versa. Like, I mean, that's the whole issue, isn't it? That people are being demonized and smeared, and it's really not helpful. I think.
Well, I got told I was transphobic because I said if we allow anyone into a female bathroom, or even make a gender neutral area, it will. I don't care what you say. It will give people who look upon vulnerable people their bloody angle to get in. And the thing is, a lot of abuse does happen at home, but a lot of abuse is happening more and more out of the home. We are coming to realise that very clearly in this world. People need to realise this isn't a hunky-dory world we live in. I do not see butterflies and sunflowers and all that every single day. It's a bit of a crap world. There's lots of arseholes and there's lots of nice people. And we just got to weed through the nasty bits and have a few precautions. You know, we've disagreed on different things tonight. We've also agreed on things, and we have agreed on a lot. And I think the problem is you are meeting and being met with radical, idiotic trans activists who, for some reason, have someone threw 50 pence in them and sent them away, and they are just going for it hell or leather. And when I got called transphobic for saying it can open the door for paedophiles, I was a transphobic idiot. And yet, even though I was able to support evidence that in America 2 years ago, pedosexual was brought up as a new, and I was like, this is really actually happening, and we need to be careful of all the, yay, do what you want, be what you want, because if I'm honest with you, a lot of children have been abused over the years, and everyone says, you know, we're spreading we're paving the way for the younger generation. But I actually associate, and so do you, with a lot of the old generation. And some of the things I tell the old generation absolutely shocks them. Because I hear the same thing. I don't care if you're a boy or a girl. Just be respectful when you're around me. Don't be too loud. You know, I even get told, cover your bits when I'm changing my bra top in the changing rooms. That's just a generation of an elderly generation who would just like that. And to be totally fair, it would really scare them if someone was transgender and showed their bits to them. Because no matter what someone says to me, this is my female penis, well, it's a penis. It can't be penis. The thing is as well, I'm going to say this, if I was single and if you are single and we were dating and you dated someone who was transgender and they told you and they hadn't had surgery, you yourself have said, I couldn't continue with that relationship because she's a heterosexual woman. And people go, oh, you're transphobic. What? Because I don't want to sleep with a vagina. What?
Sexual preferences.
You can't force this upon me. You've seen the articles. You would have read them. I saw them recently. A woman in the paper, I was attacked because I showed him my penis. And, well, he's a straight man. And if you're going to entrap someone into that false sense of security, do it at your own risk. I don't agree with violence at all, but you need to be aware of the circumstances, the situations, and the environment you're going to be putting yourself in. Lots of people in Newcastle walk around very OTT. I've done it in the past. I know people are going to stare. I know people may say something, but I'm aware of it. It's these people that dress, and then when someone says something, they go, oh, shock, horror. Somebody's offended by my pink tutu, my see-through bikini, and my big orange wig. No, someone's not offended. They're just curious.
In shock, yeah, whatever. And you can't expect everybody to take your stuff on board.
And I'll never, ever expect anyone to take myself on board. I feel the world is so crazy and so different, but we deep down are all equal human beings.
Absolutely,
that have different laws that help each other, but also we're going to have some conflicts, because if we didn't have conflicts, we'd be all happy, smiley, robots, and
then we'd probably kill each other.
And then we'd probably kill each other off because you're too happy. That would be the issue. You're too happy. I feel debates are going to continue to happen. I think you've been able to articulate yourself.
Debates have to be debates. It can't just be
a shouting
one
match.
Person shouting over the other. You have to let the other person talk to then get a fully formed opinion. And that is just the problem with the transgender community at the moment. There is this thing, #no debate, and why can't we just talk? Like, I just don't get it. Like, why can't we just talk?
Also, the thing is as well, everything I've just mentioned, as in all the different identifiers, I'm totally fine with anyone being who they want to be, and I totally am. But sometimes I don't understand why somebody is throwing themselves in the middle of the public domain and screaming from the rooftop, and then when they don't get the welcome or attention they want, or the validation, they cause a fuss. Everything I read about being transgender is negative. I've never read, well, I have read, but the ones that are in the headlines, it's always the case of, I was misgendered in a restaurant, or I was kicked out of a pub. It's obviously because I was trans. Maybe you're just a gobby arsehole. Have you ever thought of that? Do you know what I mean? I've been kicked out of nightclubs, and it's because I'm a gobby arsehole. Yeah. It's not because I'm transgender. Yeah. I will obviously, there's certain things that, as you said, you believe this, I believe that. The toilet situation, I think, is always going to be a debate that goes on. But I think we need to realise there has to be something in place, because not only will it put people at risk, but women go to these spaces, as I do as a woman, to feel safe. And if somebody was walking around and said to me, I'm transgender, I'm going to be like this to my penis, or I'm going to get a shower, I would, me personally, because I feel like I can't, I would say, you exposing yourself like that is very confusing and conflicting for my mind, because I resemble that as a penis that a man would have, because before I transitioned, I had a penis, and my penis was male, and I was, in my opinion, I was a transgendered woman who was post-op. When I transitioned, I'm just fair, and I did transition, and I transitioned to be a woman. The thing that irritates me is people seem to forget, right, you've transitioned. Do you want to tell me what to? Because I get so confused, because you stood in front of me. I've met people who were like, I'm a woman, and they stood there with a beard in men's clothes, and I'm like, what? Yeah. And that's not me going, oh, I don't believe you. That's me going, but if you're a woman, wouldn't you want?
Why would you want to have?
Wouldn't you want to? Yeah, wouldn't you want to represent as a woman? That for me is the point where I would have to say to that person in the changing rooms, I'm offended by this. And if they said, oh, you're transphobic, I'll say, well, I can't be transphobic, but I'm definitely going to be offended by the fact that you have the penis. Because if I was to go to a male changing room, I'm sure some guys would say, whoa, what you doing? What you doing, love? And they'd probably, be a bit crazy. And the thing is as well, I've noticed some women I come across are like on eggshells when they talk to me. And I'm like, what's wrong? And they're very... They don't know what to say in case they're going to offend me. And I'm so confused by that, because if someone misgenders me accidentally, I'm not going to go crazy. If someone misgenders me and they're being horrible, I'm going to tell them off. But my granddad still calls me Kevin. But he's 92. What am I going to do? He's 92. He just hears my voice and sees my face and goes, hello, son, that kind of thing. And I don't care, because I'm spending time with my granddad, and who cares? When people get misgendered and it's a negative and malice, I do agree. You know, why are you doing that? What kind of gratification are you getting out of misgendering someone for your personal, oh, look at me? It doesn't make you hard. It doesn't make you big. In fact, it just makes a reaction come from these people, and it just makes your argument look even weaker. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Great.
Well, it's been a great interview. I hope you've enjoyed yourself.
I have. I've really enjoyed it. And maybe we could come up to Newcastle one time and do an actual real life meeting either.
Absolutely. Well, if you have any events that you want a normal-minded person to maybe come,
Absolutely.
and the thing is, you know, you just
voices,
a rational voice.
The voices.
Stop calling it radical and call it rational.
Yeah, just rational.
Rational feminism.
I'm a rational trans feminist. There's going to be so many subgroups and categories. It's going to be exciting. But that's the thing. There is, you know, there's on the states of race. There's a black woman who I can work with and doesn't really mention her race, and there's a black woman I can work with who is continuously. That's all it's about. And if that's all you're going to focus about and go on about, it's a little bit sad.
Yeah.
And I think if we talk like we just have today, some people on this page will probably disagree with what we've both said, and we'll probably transphobic, radical feminists. And if I'm one of them, then God, hey, if I'm a radical feminist or an idiot because I can listen, well, where's my badge? I'm an idiot. I don't care. But it's been a pleasure to have you, and I hope obviously when we come offline, we'll be able to talk. And if there is any reasonable questions on the comments, please stay around and answer them. Some people might have some great questions, but it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me on. Thanks for inviting me.
Not a problem. Toodle pip.
Bye.
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 Oh, I thought you ended it there.
Well,
that was really, really interesting.
It was very, very interesting. It was very interesting, and I didn't agree with everything.
I didn't agree with everything.
I didn't.
But she's in her right to say that. And Venice actually said she's not calling for like the end of every trans woman. She's not saying we shouldn't have rights. She's actually saying we should have rights and we should also have protections. But so should women. And sometimes there is going to be conflicts. For example, like Ireland, with the whole repeal the 8th and the abortion law, how can transgender people complain about it being exclusionary when it's just something that affects
I'm going to social
women.
Media a little bit.
So if you do have any questions or anything, please get them into us, and please also remember to share this video.
Yes, guys, please keep sharing. And I am going to read the comments, and we will respond to as many as we can. But I will say this. Whatever I said, and whatever she said, and whatever you said, it's our opinion.
Exactly.
I never mean any malice by what I say.
Based on lived experience.
And I feel her reactions were very circumstantial. We spoke to her with respect. She spoke to us with respect. Things she didn't agree with, I said, oh, I don't agree with you on that. And things I agreed with, she came to me very politely. But for some people, if you're going to hear the word like, oh, you're a man and stuff, I'd get upset. I'd get angry. But I would diplomatically target and tackle that. I wouldn't be screaming. I mean, we've seen videos of people like on that stair video, that event that they were at, and they were like on the stairs going like, get out.
Yeah, that was nice.
Yeah. So from that event, you know what I mean? It's scary to see things like that. And I think deep down, if we have rational trans feminists and rational women feminists having a conversation, we'd actually make a lot of progress.
The thing is, there's crazy on both sides, and at the moment you've got the crazy trans activists who are shouting and screaming and ranting and raving, and then you've got the radical feminists who are also the crazy ones who are spitting bombs, blah blah blah, and in the middle there is the rational people who just want to talk. And I actually think, from talking to Venice, I don't really think she's as radical as I thought she was.
Well, I'm going to say this. Radical feminists, yeah? There's radical feminists who can talk. And then there's radical feminists who I believe, on both sides of every community, some people just jump on a bandwagon, squeeze it really tight, and are either super nice about it and like, yeah, I love everyone, or are super nasty. Vile, nasty people from both sides. I would not agree if Venice called me a man and things like that, and I would totally disagree and tell her what my opinion was. And you know, the thing is, I think she would listen.
Exactly, and I also don't agree with, like, you know, some trans people are like punch a turf and, you know, all these horrible
violence
things.
becomes
TERF
violence.
is the trans exclusionary radical feminist. It's the term that people use.
I thought it was the grass that you get for your garden, so I'm really back in the time. Am I not going to get some turf? Anyway, guys, what a great interview. But it's now time for Now That I Call the News. And the only news that's worth talking about is what happened to Morgan Freeman.
Which was disgraceful.
Well, from our knowledge, from a close source, there was basically accusations of sexual misconduct. Then he made a statement, but I don't know if he actually made a statement, but it was said he did. But then it was said that it was taken out of context what he said. And I'm just going to say this one more time. Stop jumping on the bandwagon of things because it validates you, because it really doesn't. You can't just suddenly be like, oh yeah, you know, misconduct, blah, blah, look what happened to me. If it actually didn't happen, don't say it, because you can ruin people's lives.
Exactly. All that happened is, people that don't know, Michael Caine was telling the story about how he mistook a lady for being pregnant and asked her how long she was, and she was like, I'm not pregnant. Morgan Freeman said, oh, I wish I was there, referring to the incident of Michael Caine mistaking a woman for being pregnant. He wasn't meaning that he wanted to be there at the conception of the birth. That's not what he was meaning.
A lot of people are commenting, and we just want to say why he's all there, guys. If there's anyone that wants to join us for the final 5 minutes and just give us their opinion that is different to mine and different to yours, please feel free to comment at the bottom or request to be in. I hate that the camera is on there. Or request to be in. And the thing is, a lot of you do think everything you've heard Venice has said and done and all that stuff is really bad. But I choose not to read all that because I didn't want to walk in and be like, oh yeah, it's really bad, she's an idiot. Because what she has said in the past is what she said in the past. I've said crap in the past. Everyone has. But if anyone wants to join us for the last 5 minutes, please let us know in the next few moments. Otherwise, I've been Faye Louise.
And I've been Jossie Endel.
And we have been Rational Trans Feminists.
Let's get the movement going, please.
Hashtag Rational Trans Feminists. Okay, guys. I'll see you next week. And we have a very, very special guest. It's going to be one heck of a show. Good night and God bless.
Bye.